UN renews call for Israel to open Rafah crossing will allow Gaza aid. Trump terminates Canada trade talks over Reagan ad controversy. A tropical storm Melissa threatens Caribbean, kills one in Haiti. UK Supreme Court dismisses P&ID's case, orders £44 million payment to Nigeria. Good afternoon. Welcome to the World in 30 Minutes on Politics and Business Television. I am Fatima Abubakar Oyibo. Many thanks for joining us. Details of this news stories and more content to come after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in details. The United Nations has once again urged Israel to open the Rafah border crossing and allow the impeded flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza amid a fragile ceasefire and worsening humanitarian crisis. According to UN officials, aid deliveries remain far below the levels agreed upon in the ceasefire terms, leaving thousands of displaced Palestinians in dire need of food, water, and medical supplies. Despite international pressure, Israel has kept the Rafah crossing largely closed, citing ongoing security concerns and the return of hostages as key conditions. However, reports suggest that preparations are underway to reopen the crossing, possibly as early as Sunday, to facilitate the movement of people and aid. The UN and aid agencies continue to press for broader access and increased delivery routes to prevent further deterioration of living conditions in the besieged enclave. Meanwhile, Pope Leo has authorized the celebration of the traditional Latin Mass at St. Peter's Basilica, marking a significant shift in Vatican liturgical policy. The decision was announced by Una Voce International, a federation of Catholic groups devoted to the pre-Vatican II liturgy, which expressed gratitude for the move. U.S. Cardinal Raymond L. Burke has been granted permission to lead the Mass during an October pilgrimage. This development comes amid growing calls from traditionalist Catholics to restore broader access to the Latin Mass, which had faced restrictions under Pope Francis. While the Vatican Press Office confirmed the meeting between Pope Leo and Cardinal Burke, it did not provide details, leaving observers to interpret the gesture as a nod to liturgical inclusivity. The decision is expected to reignite debate over the role of tradition in modern Catholic worship. In the meantime, President Donald Trump has abruptly ended all trade negotiations with Canada following a controversial advertisement aired by the Ontario government. The ad featured a clip of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan criticizing tariffs, which Trump labeled as fraudulent and fake. In a statement posted on Truth Social, Trump accused Canada of attempting to influence an upcoming U.S. Supreme Court decision on the legality of its global tariffs, calling their actions egregious and a threat to national security. The termination of talks affect over $1.3 trillion in annual trade between the two nations and comes amid ongoing tensions under the USMCA agreement, particularly over steel, aluminium, and automotive tariffs. Ontario Premier Doug Ford acknowledged the ad's provocative nature, predicting Trump's displeasure. The Reagan Foundation also criticized the ad's use of Reagan's image, adding fuel to the diplomatic fallout. With the next USMCA review slated for 2026, this latest move signals a deepening rift in U.S.-Canada trade relations. In the meantime, the White House has officially announced that President Donald Trump will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea on October 30th as part of his multinational Asia tour. The bilateral meeting is scheduled ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC Summit, which will take place in the city of Gyeongju from October 31 to November 1st. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed the meeting during a briefing, noting that Trump will return to Washington immediately afterward. Trump Trump's Asia tour includes stops in Malaysia and Japan before concluding in South Korea. While it remains unclear whether he will attend the APEC summit itself, Trump stated that he hopes the meeting with Xi will help work out a lot of doubts and questions following months of trade tensions. The high-level engagement is expected to focus on economic cooperation, regional security, and diplomatic relations between the two global powers. While Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda has condemned what he described as a blatant breach of his country's territorial integrity after two Russian military aircraft briefly entered Lithuanian airspace. The incident occurred on October 23 when a Sukhoi Su-30 fighter jet and an II-78 refueling tanker reportedly crossed into Lithuanian territory from the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad during aerial refueling exercises. In response, Lithuania's Ministry of National Defense confirmed that NATO jets on patrol were scrambled to intercept the aircraft, emphasizing that every inch of their country is protected. The Lithuanian government has summoned Russian diplomats in Vilnius to protest the violation and demanded an explanation from Moscow. Russia's defense military has denied any wrongdoing, claiming the jets remained within Kaliningrad's airspace during the training fights. Well, tropical storm Melissa is sweeping through the Caribbean, leaving destruction in its wake, claiming at least one life in Haiti. The storm made with landfall with heavy rains and strong winds, triggering flash floods and landslides in vulnerable areas in Port-au-Prince. A 32-year-old man was reported dead after being swept away by floodwaters, while dozens of homes were damaged across the southern region. Authorities in neighboring islands have issued warnings and evacuation orders as Melissa continues its path towards the Bahamas. Emergency services are on high alert and regional governments are coordinating relief efforts to minimize further casualties. Meteorologists warn that the storm could intensify, urging residents to stay indoors and monitor official updates. You're still watching The World in 30 Minutes live on Politics and Business TV. Still to come, at least 25 killed in India after bus catches fire in crash with motorcycle. Stay with us. Welcome back. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump's rare visit to Malaysia for the ASEAN summit has placed Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim in a delicate diplomatic spotlight, as only the third U.S. president to visit the Southeast Asian nation. Trump's arrival is seen as a significant moment for Malaysia, which has long maintained a neutral stance amid intensifying U.S.-China rivalry. The visit underscores Washington's renewed interest in Southeast Asia and presents Anwar with both an opportunity and a challenge: how to deepen ties with the U.S. without alienating China, Malaysia's largest trading partner. Anwar is expected to host a bilateral meeting with Trump during the summit, followed by a signing ceremony involving other regional leaders. Analysts say the Malaysian leader must navigate these engagements carefully to preserve his country's strategic autonomy. With regional tensions simmering and global powers vying for influence, Anwar's diplomatic finesse will be closely watched as he seeks to balance economic interests, security cooperation, and national sovereignty. Well, in a bold move for menstrual equity, 25-year-old activist Mahnur Omer has taken the Pakistani government to court, challenging the taxation of sanitary products. Filing her petition at the Lahore High Court's Rawalpindi bench, Omer argues that the 40% tax on menstrual items like sanitary pads is discriminatory and unconstitutional. She contends that these products are essential, not luxury goods, and that taxing them punishes women for a biological function that they cannot control. Omer's legal actions names the Federation of Pakistan, the Ministry of Finance, and the Federal Federal Board of Revenue as respondent. Growing up in Rawalpindi, Omer recalls the shame and secrecy surrounding menstruation, describing how she used to hide pads up her sleeve in school like narcotics. Her campaign has sparked a national debate on gender equity and public health, with many calling for menstrual products to be declared tax-exempt essentials. The case could set a precedent for how governments treat feminine hygiene products and may pave the way for broader reforms in reproductive health policy across Pakistan. A devastating accident in southern India has claimed the lives of at least 25 people after a passenger bus collided with a motorcycle and erupted into flames. The tragedy occurred near Chinna Tekuru village in Kurnool district, Andhra Pradesh, as a bus was traveling from Hyderabad to Bengaluru in the early hours of Friday. According to police reports, the motorcycle rammed into the rear of the speeding bus and got stuck, causing sparks that ignited the fuel tank. The fire spread rapidly, trapping many passengers who were asleep at that time. Some passengers managed to escape by smashing windows, but many were burned to death before help could arrive. The sleeper coach was carrying around 40 people, and several survivors are now being treated for injuries. Local authorities and state leaders have expressed deep condolences and other immediate relief measures. The incident has raised fresh concern about road safety and emergency preparedness on India's highways. Coming back to Africa, as Ivory Coast prepares for a critical presidential election on October 25th, thousands of Ivorians have taken to the streets to denounce what they call a flawed and rigged electoral system. Demonstrations erupted in Abidjan's Yopougon neighborhood, where protesters waved flags and carried placards demanding justice and transparency. Civil society groups and opposition leaders have called for shutdowns and boycotts, accusing the government of excluding key opposition figures and manipulating electoral processes. President Alassane Ouattara, who is seeking a controversial fourth term, remains a dominant figure in the race, despite growing unrest and international scrutiny. The government has deployed over 44,000 security personnel nationwide to maintain order. But their presence has heightened tensions in urban centers. With deep political fault lines and memories of past electoral violence still fresh, the upcoming vote is seen as a test of Ivory Coast's democratic resilience. In a decisive victory for Nigeria, the United Kingdom Supreme Court has once again dismissed the case brought by Process and Industrial Development's P&ID against the Nigerian government. The court upheld earlier rulings that nullified the controversial $11 billion arbitration award, citing evidence of fraud and corruption in the original contract process. The judgment not only clears Nigeria of liability but also mandates P&ID to pay £44 million in legal costs. The ruling marks a significant milestone in Nigeria's long-ruling legal battle to overturn what it described as a fraudulent claim. Government officials have hailed the decision as a triumph for justice and a warning to entities attempting to exploit arbitration systems through dishonest means. The case, which has spanned several years and jurisdictions, now appears to be conclusively resolved in Nigeria's favor. And that wraps up the program. But before we go, the headlines again. UN renews call for Israel to open Rafah crossing, allow Gaza aid. Trump terminates Canada trade talks over Reagan Act controversy. A tropical storm Melissa threatens Caribbean, kills one in Haiti. UK Supreme Court dismisses P&ID's case, orders £44 million payments to Nigeria. For more updates and in-depth analysis, follow Politics and Business TV.English on YouTube and Facebook. Connect with us on Instagram at PMBTV_English and TikTok and X at PMBTV_ENG. Remember to subscribe and stay informed. From me, Fatima Abubakar Oyibo, to have a lovely day. Bye for now.
Hi.